Hi, so I'm Chela Aufderheide, and I graduated this May from William and Mary in History and Russian and Post-Soviet Studies. And this summer, I had the honor of being accepted for the Katzenberger internship. And my coursework in folklore at William and Mary and area studies and just my love of writing led me to apply specifically for the Folklife magazine project. So my mentor for this internship has been Charlie Weber. He's here on the call. And Charlie's a media specialist at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and an editor at Folklife magazine, as well as, I would add, a writer and a video director. And he's just been incredibly supportive and helpful for me as I've been navigating this internship, especially with the switch to remote work. And partly because of the changes that were made from COVID, I've really had a high degree of independence, I think, with this internship. All of the interns that are working with Charlie on the magazine are pretty much all working on feature pieces for the magazine on topics that they chose themselves. And that's also been most of what I've been doing. One of the things I really love about the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and the magazine's work is this more expansive definition of folklore that moves away from the kind of colonial and imperial origins of the field. And I felt justified in using this meme because memes are a form of folklore. So this more expansive and inclusive view meant that first of all, my fellow magazine interns were working on a really diverse array of projects. And also I had a lot of freedom in what topic I was going to choose, first of all, because the whole world was open before me, and also how I was going to research that topic. Last year, I spent the spring semester studying abroad in Poland. And in the summer, my family, there they are in the picture, came to visit me. And we went on this hike called the Trail of the Eagle's Nests in southwest Poland. And one of the things that really stood out to me there was just how many wayside shrines you see in the Polish countryside, and really in Polish neighborhoods in general, as soon as you get out of the very center of the city. We tend to kind of associate wayside shrines with road accidents and stuff like that. But in Poland, anyone can establish one for a really wide array of reasons. And usually they're established out of thanks for a specific act of grace, or to commemorate something that happened in someone's life, or even just to show faith or as an act of penance. So there are really a lot of wayside shrines established for different reasons. And one other sort of referent for me when I was starting out was this music video by one of my favorite Polish groups. And in the video, they chose to frame these old women by the shrine as the priest in the folk song that they're singing. So I was kind of intrigued by this, and I wanted to know more about the cultural significance of these shrines. At first, I thought that this was going to be a pretty specific topic already. I thought, I'm going to research wayside shrines in Poland, and that'll be it. But when I was doing some preliminary research, I realized that if I was going to explore this topic in depth, there were really a lot of different directions it could go. For example, I could have talked about the iconography of the different figures and images in the shrines, or I could have talked specifically about the different intentions behind establishing a shrine and the folklore surrounding that. But one thing I also started to notice when I was looking at these articles and other pieces that give kind of an overview of the shrines was sentences like this. If you can see that, that's behind my little Zoom sidebar over there. And I was a bit wary of this sort of narrative because it played into a kind of historical story that I had learned to be wary of in my history classes in school, which is the idea that Poland and Polish culture and Polish history is intrinsically Catholic. And the idea that sort of follows from that is that to be Polish and truly Polish is to be Catholic. And while Catholicism is really important culturally in Poland, this is not a victimless idea, and it's been employed recently, especially by the right wing in Poland, which is in power there and has been since 2015. So it's been used to exclude Jewish people, to exclude migrants and refugees, to deny women reproductive rights, and most recently it's really been viciously employed against LGBT people. And I was kind of wanting to interrogate that a bit. And around the same time, I spoke to a Polish friend of mine, and I told her that I was going to research this project. And my Polish friend is actually an LGBT activist, and she was raised in a Catholic home and has some negative associations with that. So this is actually what she told me. And she referred to these shrines as roadside trauma. I was like, what? So there was clearly some kind of tension here associated with the shrines and the way that they exist in public space that wasn't coming up in the literature that I was seeing. And so eventually I decided that I was going to sort of explore this with the broadest possible folk group in mind. And that was people living in Polish communities. So not just the founders of shrines or the caretakers of shrines, but people living in communities with shrines who pass by them every day, whether they're Catholic or not Catholic. And I wanted to know like how they were reading those shrines and what meaning they had. And to get these voices, for the most part, I circulated this survey on Google Forms in Polish and English. And well, this was probably not the ideal method for getting these voices. I would have liked to have, say, gone to Poland and interviewed everyone in the community. I do think the anonymity of the survey helped people maybe be a bit more honest in their responses than they would have been otherwise. So in the end, I got 135 responses to my survey, and I also carried out 4 interviews. There's a stereotype that Polish people aren't helpful and they're really grumpy. This is not true. I wouldn't have been able to do my project if so many people hadn't been so enthusiastic and so friendly and helpful in wanting to share their experiences and connect me with resources, pass around my survey, and just help me learn about their culture. So that was great. I was actually surprised with how many survey respondents emailed me afterwards to send me photos of the shrines in their neighborhoods or other information like that. And I want to specifically mention here that Charlie put me in touch with Jim Deutsch, a curator at the center, and he was able to get me in touch with his friends in Poland because that's one of the many, many places he's lived. And Charlie also put me in touch with a former intern at the Smithsonian, a Max or Margorzata, and I was actually able to have a phone interview with her mother about the shrines in her neighborhood. And I just want to show you a few of these survey responses that I got. The one on top here is actually the first response to my survey. And I was also interested in the way that this Catholic man specifically referenced the way that the shrines take up public space and the way that they claim them for people in the community, but also with this different reading Catholic people in the community. But for this young non-binary person, shrines had like a more homey and organic kind of feel that made them have positive associations with shrines as opposed to like more official Catholic objects and symbols. And here are 2 more responses. The first one refers to the past and specifically the community past as something that the shrines are invoking, which appeared in a lot of responses. And here's someone else who specifically connects them to the political situation in Poland. So once I had a whole lot of different responses like that and some longer interviews, I had to find a way to kind of weave them together. And I was looking at the different meanings that stood out to passersby and the way that they were sort of reading these shrines as they walked by them or otherwise interacted with them. And the way that I settled into kind of approaching this was the idea of the interlocking meanings that the shrines gather over time, which is sort of a phrase I use in my piece. So starting out with the original meaning that the shrine has when someone establishes it, either in thanks or for another reason to mark a specific event. And sometimes that's written in an inscription on the shrine, so people can like literally read it if they decide to look at it that way and be interested in its history. And then moving out, it would be the shrine's role in the Catholic community, the services that are sometimes had at shrines, and then also Catholicism's political meaning in Poland, which has kind of fluctuated, but been definitely present for at least 2 centuries. Shrines were actually sometimes destroyed or people were punished for having built them during the communist period and during the period of the partitions because they were associated with, because really Catholicism was associated with Polish resistance to the authorities. And now, of course, Catholicism is associated with the right wing in Poland to an extent, so that political connotation has kind of been there for a while. And on the other hand, just by virtue of existing in the community and in public space, these shrines interact with everybody's lives in the community. And because they're such distinctive parts of the space, especially in the smaller like neighborhood, they can be used as like landmarks, as meeting places, or for like giving directions and that sort of thing. So there's also that layer of interaction. And this is a little brainstorm sketch that I wrote in my notebook when I was trying to work that out. So my article kind of follows that thread outward, sort of. So what did I learn from this experience? Well, this was really my first time doing a kind of magazine-style writing, working on a feature piece. All of the nonfiction writing I had done before was basically academic papers, and I'm sure Charlie can attest to the fact that the first draft I sent in looked a lot more like an academic paper in structure and in format than it does now. So that's really been just an incredible learning experience, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to do this type of writing. It's really something I'm grateful to have gotten the opportunity to do. And I also had the time to dedicate to this project to do some in-depth editing, which is something that I hadn't really been able to do before, just because usually you're working on a pretty tight schedule. But I've been able to spend enough time with this piece to like really thoroughly rework it and then do some more specific edits. So recently I sent in the third draft of my piece, and I expect I'll have like at least a couple more before it's done. I also got the chance to conduct some interviews. Usually I'm on the other side of an interview, so this was a pretty interesting experience also. And just writing about this topic and researching it was kind of a challenge that I had to step up to, because I wanted to write about a Catholic tradition that's really important to a lot of people in a sensitive way, while also including these broader voices, and some of them having some, and so I had to try to weave all of these voices together, and I can only hope I've done that in a way that I hope tells an honest and meaningful story. And this angle was also a little tricky sometimes to negotiate with some of my informants, especially when I did the interviews, and that's kind of an ongoing process at this stage. And I also want to add here that every week, Charlie and the other magazine interns would meet for sort of a kind of workshop setting, and sometimes we would share writing or just check in, and that was incredibly helpful for me. So I want to thank not just Charlie, but also all of the other interns working at Folklife for giving me feedback on my piece and just helping me by showing their own perspectives and the work that they were doing. So what's next for me? Well, I'll be working on the fourth draft of my piece, and hopefully sometime soon you will see it published in the magazine. The end date for my internship has been extended to the end of September, so I'll be continuing to work on this project and hopefully some other pieces. And currently I'm looking into applying for grad school, but having had this opportunity to do this style of writing has really made me see that this is something I'd be interested in doing more of in the future. So it's just been a great opportunity. Yeah, and that's it. So thank you.